Welcome, I'm Glenn Anderson, producer and host of this TV series, Glenn's Parallax Perspectives. This series explores a wide variety of issues related to peace, social and economic justice, the environment, and nonviolent social change. We especially provide opportunities for the public to hear voices and viewpoints that are rarely heard in mainstream media. Mainstream media, politicians, and culture see the world in conventional ways. The establishment is stuck in how they see the world. In order to solve problems, we need to see things differently. This TV series, Glenn's Parallax Perspectives, can help us see things differently so we can solve problems at all levels, from the local to the global. This series is called Glenn's Parallax Perspectives. Here's what the word parallax means. Put one finger in front of your nose and another finger farther away. Close one eye, then open that eye and close the other. Your fingers will seem to move. This is called a parallax view. This TV series invites you to look at issues from fresh perspectives. Also, see much information about the issues that we cover in this TV series and previous episodes of this series at my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. And now I invite you to watch this month's program. This month's interview on Glenn's Parallax Perspectives is very timely now in the autumn of 2020, and it will continue to be a useful resource for people long after it airs on cable TV in Thurston County, Washington, and on my blog. It'll air during November 2020, and then it'll stay on my blog forever. Nearly everybody knows that our nation is sharply polarized regarding politics and public policy issues. More than a century and a half ago, around the time of our nation's Civil War in the 1860s, President Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And some people are seeing the United States currently polarized in such a way that really is jeopardizing our survival as the kind of nation that we want. And so we need to deal with polarization because we care about the country and we care about all of us who live here. Many Americans recognize that we have to heal the extreme polarization that is seeming to be tearing our country apart. And we have three guests who will share their insights and remedies so all of us can help to depolarize our nation. We're taping this interview on October 8, 2020. It will air on cable TV 13 times throughout November 2020. Soon after the November election, we'll tape another interview on this topic for airing throughout December, also on cable TV in Thurston County. And I will post both of these TV programs to my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org, so that people anywhere at any time can watch both programs long into the future. Also, I will type up a very thorough summary of what we said during both of these TV programs, and I'll include links so people can get additional information about the topic, and that will be posted to my blog as well. Three guests will explore the topic, and they're here with us right now. All three guests have exceptional knowledge and skills about how to resolve conflicts based on their experience working with methodologies and nonprofit organizations that promote these really positive, helpful methodologies. Their backgrounds include Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication model and a savvy nonprofit organization, the Compassionate Listening Project, that has its own accomplishments and ways of doing things. Some of our guests have conducted trainings and workshops in many parts of the world, including Israel, Palestine, Japan, China, Guatemala, Cuba, Nigeria, Kashmir, and in American prisons. So I'm happy to welcome Douglas Dolstad. He has long experience with nonviolent communication, and especially with an organization called Northwest Compassionate Communication. Susan Partnow and Rachel Eryn Kalish have long experience with the Compassionate Listening Project. I'm happy to welcome all three of you. I'm glad that we're all here, and we're going to do something really constructive and positive, helpful for our society during this hour. Most Americans, I think, do recognize how polarized our nation is, even if they find themselves on one side or another or in the middle. I believe that our nation can do much better than we have been doing if enough people of goodwill do enough deep listening and practice compassion and try to heal our nation, and not just the people that we think are on the other side and wrong, but if we try to be human beings, all of us together. So this program transcends positions on the political spectrum. Instead of blaming people who are on the wrong side, and all of us need to depolarize, even people within one spot on the spectrum of politics, do some polarization themselves, even on their own spot on that spectrum. So this interview seeks to cultivate compassion and understanding instead of labeling or blaming people who we think are wrong about politics and issues. And this does not mean that we're ignoring our own values, nor does this mean compromising our beliefs and simply meeting people halfway toward things that we disagree with. But we want to affirm all human beings and help everybody move ahead. So this TV interview really is about how we can actually help everybody protect our common humanity, even while our nation makes progress toward solving problems, which is what we want to be doing. In my introduction to the interview, I said the American people seem to be polarized. Douglas, let me ask you first, what do you sense that the American people, or portions of the American people, are observing and feeling nowadays? Douglas?
I think some people are observing that it's difficult to express themselves without getting a reaction that they find challenging. I think a lot of people are feeling discouraged, scared, maybe a little alienated, wondering where they belong. Confused, I think, is another common feeling. Yeah, I think a lot of people are hoping for something that makes sense to them, that connects them to their own humanity and other people.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That's a good way to start it. I want to follow up. If anybody here has any sense about the polarizations that people are experiencing beyond what Douglas has said, if there's anything from anybody else, from either Rachel, Eryn, or Susan to add.
I'll step in here for a second, and thank you for having us and for doing the show. It's obviously so important right now, given what's going on. So, you know, part of the way I see it is that there's really no one to blame, because we've all participated in a society that has historically got a lot of adversarial aspects to it. And, you know, not everybody has done inner work to heal our own polarization internally, so we can move into blame quite quickly. And, you know, we've got siloed information sources, so people aren't getting the same set of information anymore. Movies, I mean, it was so amazing to think about how many apocalyptic films that we are seeing now. And so we don't see a lot of, you know, reflection of what can be and positive possibilities, and just a lack of skills. I mean, these skills are still not taught deeply in schools and in workplaces. Of course, they are more than they used to be. And then also, we just haven't really created the structures. We really, you know, there are many, many circles, you know, of NVC and compassionate listening, and many dialogue groups all around this country and actually around the world. And yet there's not really institutional structures that support this work. And I think all of those things have created a level of both breakdown and then people just not knowing that there's another way.
Yeah, so we really need to be breaking new ground to show people there is another way, because that's not being offered to us. So everything you get through news media and advocacy organizations and political parties are all about, I'm right, my gang is right, your gang is bad. And it's like, if you think of, the like urban gang warfare, West Side Story or other gangs in more recent years, it's like, I got to protect the people in my gang against the people in your gang. And I mean, that whole thing just leads us down the wrong path.
Yeah, we've
I
gotten
appreciate
very
all three of you.
tribal.
Yeah,
Gotten
I,
very
I
And
appreciate all three of you. Go ahead, Susan.
tribal.
it's interesting that I've heard it said that the new segregation is ideological. So we're not even coming into contact with each other. We have little bubbles, neighborhoods, even cities, even whole coasts. So we don't mingle even as much, and that adds to this othering of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I've been urging for a number of years now is talk with people who are politically different from you, but talk about anything except politics. So talk about how your garden is doing this growing season. Talk about your grandchildren, talk about the weather, talk about whatever, but do this with somebody who is politically different and just leave the politics out of it and focus on how are your tomatoes doing this year or whatever. I mean, that would be a refreshing, helpful
Just
thing.
build connection.
Yeah,
Build
yeah.
connection.
I want to spend a bit of time with each of the models that that you folks work with. We'll do a little bit of an introductory, here's what this model is about, and then we'll revisit each model and apply it. So I want to start with Douglas, who has a lot of experience with nonviolent communication, a model developed by Marshall Rosenberg, in all kinds of settings, in families, workplaces, local communities, and society at large. People need better skills for dealing with conflicts. Conflicts do arise in families, workplaces, neighborhoods, and so forth. And Marshall Rosenberg's model of nonviolent communication, often called compassionate communication, provides helpful ways to do this. Douglas, can you briefly just lay out the 4-step process, and then we'll come back and revisit parts of that later.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, but I need to do something else first, Glenn.
Sure.
I just want to let everybody know that, in my opinion, this model is useless unless you carry an intention.
Mm.
So, in fact, it will probably lead to more separation because people will have a felt sense that they're being manipulated and that somebody's just doing a model instead of letting this model live through them of the truth of it. So I want to say that intention is probably the most critical aspect of communication. And not very many people know what their intention is when they speak. So for those of you listening, even right now, you could imagine, what do you think my intention is in saying what I'm saying? I'm asking you to put your radiant intelligence on me for just a moment. What do you think my world's like? So Marshall, I don't like to think of it as 4 steps. I like to think of it as 4 elements. If you imagine the earth, you have earth, air, wind, and fire, and they swirl around and they create the known universe that most of us inhabit. And what Marshall did was he looked at people admired, and he noticed that they were using a different language, that they asked different questions in the face of even tremendous opportunity to exact retribution on other people. Their consciousness was somewhere else. So that's what he was really impressed with, and he was impressed that there's intent. And so he noticed that people made a distinction between observation and evaluation. So you could consider that one of the elements, getting a clear observation about what we're talking about. Another one of the elements is understanding the language of feelings. We're a social animal, we're a mammal. Our very survival is built around caring for our young and each other. And in order to do that, we have to have an exquisite neurology that is attuned to emotional intelligence. So where we get balled up sometimes in society is people confuse feelings with thoughts. So somebody who knows NVC would help themselves and other people sort out the difference between a feeling and a thought. A third element of the model that Marshall presented is this idea that what is it that motivates life anywhere? What is life calling to itself at every single moment? Even now as you're listening, life is within you. It's within me. Where is it? He decided that the best word he could come up with is this idea of needs. Now, in our language, sometimes needs gets a bad rap because people think, oh, you're needy. But it's really not that. And I wish I had the time to explain that, the difference. But you distinguish needs from strategies. That's another place that people often conflate things and where conversations and communication goes sideways. And the fourth part of it is being aware that every moment we're going through life either saying thank you or saying please, expressing some gratitude that somebody's just made my life a little more wonderful, helped me connect with some precious needs that remind me of the miracle of being alive, or in any way that people are speaking, even if they're calling you bad names, they're actually saying please. Somewhere underneath there, they're saying, please, will you help me connect with life? So I'll just go over this again. I'm going to do this in a way that I think is kind of fun. Hold out your hand. You got 4 fingers, and go ahead and wiggle them. Well, there they are, and there. You notice that the palm of my hand is oriented toward the screen. Well, those 4 fingers could be observations, feelings, needs, and requests. And when I was learning the model, I just wrote those right on my fingers, and I carried it with me. I could remind myself all the time. You got another hand. Point that towards yourself, point your own heart. So at every moment, there's life in somebody else that can be revealed through the kind of the doorway of one of those 4 elements, or your consciousness is on yourself. What am I observing? What am I feeling? What am I needing? What am I requesting of anybody? Why am I talking? What am I hoping for? You apply those in 2 different ways, either listening or honesty expressing. I'll stop there, Glenn, and see if that makes sense to you.
Great.
Is that what you were looking for?
That's perfect. That's great. Yeah, I've been through trainings several times, and as I think I mentioned to you on the phone when we were preparing, everybody who has taught a workshop about this has different ways of expressing this, and this is a fun way of hearing it. So this is great, and we'll be revisiting this to start applying it to the topic of this program about depolarizing our American society. I want to hear from our other guests who have been working with compassionate listening. The Compassionate Listening Project has a somewhat different model. It still is based on compassion and good listening and human connectedness. Susan, I wonder if you could tell us about how that model functions or what the activities are. Both of you have done training workshops in a number of seriously conflicted areas of the world. So this is not just a theoretical head trip. This actually works in the real world. Susan, tell us about compassionate listening.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We think of it as healing the world from the inside out. So it very much starts with ourself. In fact, with our body. Are we grounded? Are we centered? Are we aware of who and how I am? And then we can check out that intention that Douglas was talking about. So it really has to start from the inside out. And that means I have to be aware of my thoughts, or Douglas was saying evaluations, which are always present. So I want to notice them and maybe then make different choices about them. So I have to be aware. We talk a lot about getting triggered. What is triggering me? Do I first notice it in my body because it really sets off the amygdala, your fight or flight reflex just happens. And that is what disrupts and feeds the polarization and keeps you from listening. So as I become centered and I'm aware and I am managing my triggers, then I can make a choice to connect. And that's what our work is very much about, an energetic connection, building a bridge, going from my heart, my intention, my purest, deepest self, the true me, not the ways that I might be feeling wounded or defensive or shut down, but the beautiful core essence inside of me to that inside of you. So our skills help us do that. And so we have to cultivate compassion. Also, as Douglas said, gratitude and appreciation are very, very important, beginning with compassion, self-appreciation, and then that cup overflows so I can reach out to the other and do that in a way where I'm developing what we call the fair witness. So I'm not in the conflict, but I'm noticing a little more mindfully with distance. Wow, look at that. I am really angry. This person's getting upset. That then gives the distance and space for our third practice of respecting self and other. So I notice, oh, there's me and there's you. We both have different points of view, different perspectives. Can I step to your side and try to understand from your perspective and you from mine? And when I do all this work, now I'm really ready and able to listen from my heart and also speak from my heart. So that's kind of the model, and we have many skills to be able to do that. The intention is to connect, and we know it's always a choice, and we have to start from being connected with ourselves.
Yeah. Great, thanks. That's a great overview. I want to follow up with each of you, with Susan and then with Douglas, to dig a bit deeper in each of the models that you work with, about how your particular model could actually reduce polarization in this country now. And so we're going to dig a bit deeper beyond this in just a few minutes, but I want to see if Susan could follow up on what she said to apply what this model, this process, to the potential for how compassionate listening could help to depolarize American society.
Yeah, I think at the deepest level, what we believe in compassionate listening is that we are all interconnected. Thich Nhat Hanh used the term interbeing. So we are each a part of one another. And when I'm able to connect that deeply with myself, with my wholeness and goodness, I can then see that in you. And even though we may have very different ideas, different strategies, different politics, I can still see that deep humanity in you and even have wonder about it. Like, what is it that I'm not seeing or knowing? And when we come with that curiosity and wonder, there's a possibility of connection, not necessarily agreement, but at least connection to feel each other's humanity. And we know when we listen with those deep spiritual ears, it melts the person you're listening to. When they feel seen and heard and loved, they can open, and that hard little heart that might have shut down out of fear and polarity starts to soften, and then we can be receptive to one another. Again, not necessarily agreeing, but starting to understand one another and respecting each other.
Yeah, there's a human level that's apart from the politics that we play in our heads.
Right.
And so a lot of this has to do with getting out of the heads and into the heart and doing that connection. And really, all three of you have talked about this already in the program.
We're literally generating an electrical field that we can pull each other into. So coming from that place is transformative.
Well, I want to connect back with Douglas again now. You had a good way of explaining the four aspects or four elements of Rosenberg's model, and how might these apply toward helping us depolarize American society? And you might want to focus on any one or more of these four that you mentioned. And if we can do this in like 2 or 3 minutes, that'll be good.
Well, that's a tough call. Because this kind of listening often takes time and a certain softness. So the time to look inside, see what I'm feeling, what I'm needing, and a time to inquire of somebody else. So instead of arguing with somebody in the head, if somebody wants to be a change agent, they could change what they're looking at, what they're paying attention to. So when somebody's talking and you find yourself disagreeing with them, instead of developing your arguments about why you disagree with them, if you're interested, if you're committed to your intention of being a peacemaker, one option you could try is imagining, say to yourself, I wonder what that person's feeling right now. And I wonder what that person's needing. What are they hoping for? What kind of world do they want to bring forth? And if they feel confident enough, you could say, excuse me, I'd like to catch up with you. Are you hoping that in the way that you're describing the world being that, and then you just give a little reflection of what you hear them saying,
Mhm.
and you ask them,
Yeah.
because the authority, whether somebody's been listened to, is the person. I'm not the authority that have listened to them. They're the authority if they've been listened to.
Mhm.
So I ask them, and that's a different world. Instead of instructing and declaring, it's an inquiry. It's like, is this what you wanted to know? Have I heard you?
Yeah. And so for that
Well,
person,
pretty easy. Anybody can do that.
yeah, and for that person, that's a whole different thing than having us throw a bunch of facts at them or have a bunch of reasons why we think they're wrong. But now we've all of a sudden we've valued them uh, enough to find out, what are you feeling, what are you needing, and they can feel valued instead of feeling put down, and that's it's a whole different approach than the way people normally interact across differences. Um,
Yeah, if
and
you
it,
want to
it
have a
kind of
fun game, try a
changes the script.
conversation where that happens after each time.
Pardon me?
If you want to play a fun game, you could do what I'm suggesting in just any normal conversation and reflect back to the person what you've heard
Uh-huh.
and take a guess about what meaning it had to them
Uh-huh.
before you go on to saying what's going on with you.
Yeah. And then if you know that you've reached some agreement about what that person is feeling or what their concern is or whatever, then you can build on that. I think that this is just so different from the way we normally function, and not just in this society, but this is pretty much the way people function probably everywhere, I'm guessing. Um, but this is a whole different, opens up a whole different way of interacting. I want to dig a little bit further into these models here. I want to check in with Rachel, Eryn, and dig deeper about how we might apply the compassionate listening model that you've been working with uh, to explore some more insights and help people understand the polarization and how to depolarize. So, Rachel, Eryn, what else can
Sure,
you add?
sure, Glenn. Um, One of the things I like to say is that compassionate listening is a foundational practice. So that in itself won't necessarily resolve a conflict or bring us to greater agreement or wisdom. But what it will do is it will set a tone and build a capacity where out of that foundation, something new can emerge. It's so easy to get stuck in polarization. And as soon as one of us kind of drops our end of the rope and starts to listen, as Douglas was saying, we can do that in any conversation. We can start to really find out what really matters, unpack the deeper values. And, what we find is that as we go deeper, there's more and more common ground. And when we stay on the surface, there's much more challenge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the term values, which is our next question in our sequence here. Uh, in Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication, he talks about needs, and for those of us that work on issues that we care about, very often those needs in a public policy area are based on values. I like to have democracy. I like to have human rights. I like to have an economy that's fair. I like to have people uh, interact well with each other instead of trying to be competitive and put the other person down. So these my needs in a political sense are grounded in my values of what I want as a person, kind of society I want to live in. And when in the part of Rosenberg's model that talks about needs, if I'm working with some issue or doing a speaking engagement or writing, doing something, I'll sometimes substitute values as kind of a way that might help us connect on the issues that we're working with. And I want to ask Susan um, about, and when I was talking with you folks on the phone, uh, both Rachel, Eryn, and Susan had mentioned values as important to this. So I just want to follow up with Susan about this. Can you tell us just a bit more about values in relation to needs?
Yeah,
Maybe you can say it better than I have.
Well, I'll give it a try. I think it's we've really discovered that when someone sees and hears you at the deepest level of your values, there is a point of alchemy and transformation possible. So my values come from my deepest yearning. I think of it as a source of energy. What is arising for the world to be whole and complete? And it's when something's missing that I'm in pain. And that's often what I'm trying to be heard about or I'm making strategies about. But it's really this deep value, which is always positive. It's a yearning for wholeness. And we find you need to go deeper and deeper to the level, even of the quality of the value, because at the more dense level, it becomes a strategy. So if I say, I want democracy or a republic, that's really a strategy. What do I want? I want justice. I want fairness. I want all people to feel safe and know how to live together. Get deeper and deeper. And ultimately, I think in a way, it all comes down to love. We all want love. We want to be heard, seen, and loved. And we want our families to feel heard, seen, and loved and safe. So the deep values we find in a conflictual situation, if you listen for that level, not the strategies you're going to get very frustrated or polarized about, but, oh, you're yearning for connection, or you're yearning for safety, you're yearning and wanting for love and fairness. And that we can really connect on.
So that dimension that you're talking about connects back to what Douglas has said and what I've seen in Marshall Rosenberg's work. We're talking about that life energy. What is it that the life energy in this moment is what you're yearning for? And so there's a lot of congruence.
I think so. And I think we just like to direct our attention to the deepest level of it and find, and sometimes also we actually sometimes find reflecting feelings in a conflictual situation. I think, Rachel, Eryn, you might want to speak to that because I know you've had a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, I've worked with really, really hot conflicts quite a bit. I worked with Israeli-Palestinian issues for about 15 years, including during the Second Intifada over there, and have worked. And what I find is that if you stay at the level of feelings, a lot of times people will say things like, wow, you sound angry. Like, of course I'm angry. You would be angry too if you knew what was da, 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 da. But if you go right to values, boy, you sounds like you really care about justice. It sounds like you really care about peace. That is opening in a way that I have never found anything else to be. So,
there's another phenomenon that happens during polarization, which is I know that I'm right, and there are other people on the other side of the issue. So if I know that I'm right, they must be wrong, and I know that I'm good, so they must be evil. And you get this kind of you're a traitor, you're a tool of the devil, and you hear this kind of stuff back and forth in our political discourse, and probably not just here but other places too. You folks have all worked in conflict areas, and when our entire American society is so polarized, it makes it even easier for people to get stuck at the labeling level, and it's a very superficial and inaccurate, and so we've heard people denounce their adversaries as traitors or evil or communists or whatever. This us versus them polarization, it just shuts down the conversation. It's like during the Cold War, if you're trying to talk about something and one side says, well, if you think that, then you're a communist, and it just shuts down the conversations. You can't talk through, what to do about public policy because one person's been labeled a communist, and that's it. Or we have that kind of stuff now. Oh, you're a fascist. I won't talk with you. So I want to show on the screen something that Susan provided for us, and it's a polarization odometer.
Well, that's my name for it. This is actually a model developed by Braver Angels, which is a wonderful organization.
Yeah, and I put their website on at the top of the screen here.
Great. Yeah, they were originally called Better Angels, so I highly recommend people participating with them. So this, to me, it looks like an odometer, and I want to know, where am I placed on that? And I think what's so interesting is it's almost the same mirror images for the red or the blue, no matter what your politics. So when we're really raw and we're triggered, we're down here on my left side of the screen, as I hope the way you see it, where your emotions are like hatred and anger, and you think they are enemies, they want to harm the country. Maybe if I can soften a little bit, I'll just think, well, they're just deplorable and they're ignorant and they should know better. And that's kind of the emotion of disdain. So it's full of judgment and evaluation. If I work hard at it, maybe people get to this neutral place. Oh, well, they're well-meaning, but they just don't get it. And I have pity for them. They're duped. What we're calling ourselves to is a higher level of seeing the full humanity of each other and realizing things are not that simple. It's not right or wrong, this or that. Our issues are much more complex. So we may then start to realize, oh, I need to respect. You know, the word respect means willing to look again. This is a human being. There must be something in what they're saying. What is it that I'm not hearing that they're seeing? I might not totally agree with it, but I want to see it. They might have something, they do have something to contribute, some valid points, even though I don't agree with the overall. So with respect, I'm looking for that. And then maybe I can even get to respect and appreciation and realize they do have a lot to contribute. And it's important, an important perspective, even if I don't agree with it, but we really need to hear each other. And we need to go back to that notion of going across the aisle, to seeing that, you know, there's one perspective traditionally in a family of the stern father and the other of the compassionate mother, and they need to come together and find a way that works for everyone. So this odometer really helps me in my mind to say, ooh, I'm really dialing down over there to the hatred, and I got to cool off and really remember to step back and respect this person. I hope people find that helpful.
Yeah, that's a fun model. You shared that with me when we were preparing for this. I thought we got to use this, so I'm glad you talked us through that. That's a great model to have. And when I do the blog post, I'll post that in our
Wonderful
stuff as well. When there's a lot of potential to help people move along, and this doesn't mean just how to convert people on the other side to my side, is how to help us understand them as well, so that we don't have the polarization, but that we can understand better. When I do a lot of outreach to the public in all kinds of ways, including holding signs at street corners for decades every week. And when I reach out to the general public, or when I'm working with nonprofit organizations working on some issue, to figure out how can we help the public move toward wanting to abolish nuclear weapons, or provide health care for every person, or whatever the public policy goal is. I always strategize how I could welcome various kinds of people from the public into tapping into their best values and reaching across our society's differences. And at the peace vigils and public locations, I hold signs, and I've written, made signs to hold that welcome and include all kinds of people and invite them to affirm their best values and to affirm what our society needs at a deep level. And for example, I made signs that have these messages: act on your best values. What an outreach thing, inviting people, rather than saying you're driving a gas guzzler, so you must be wrong and evil, but just to say, act on our best values. All people are one human family. Well, that's inclusive. Doesn't matter how much somebody weighs, whether they have metal spikes and things in their faces attached or whatever. Doesn't matter what age or race or religion or what kind of car they drive. All people are one human family. Human rights are for everybody. We all share one earth. That pertains not only to peace, because the actual earth does not have lines drawn on it. Those are written by politicians and governments, the national boundaries. And also we all share one earth. The climate is an earth issue, and the pandemic is an Earth issue. So to say we all share one Earth lets us know that we really are all in this together. And I also have a sign that I made a few months ago that says, choose a bold, humane future. So again, it invites somebody to do something. I have one that says, create nonviolent solutions. Imagine a nuclear-free world. I mean, so things that will invite people to dig a little deeper in a positive way, and we get just a tremendously positive response from people when we hold these kinds of signs. People feel affirmed, they feel valued, they feel included. So I recommend that we do consider these kinds of things in whatever issues you work on or whatever interactions we have. I want to follow up again with Susan here. When we were preparing for the interview, you mentioned that even people on the progressive side of issues need to refrain from polarizing the people whose values are different or whose political positions are different. Can you say something about what you've sometimes seen even in the progressive movement and how we might do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are using terms like the call out culture or the cancel culture these days. And there are habits and behaviors that are making people come up with those terms. And I think that especially I'm in the progressive community, and I value all of the things we've been talking about, respect of the other and learning from each other. But many progressives are really demonizing and contributing to this othering, which is really a contradiction to our highest values. So I try to call them to that and point that out. And also that is adding to the polarization. And in terms of the political situation, if progressives are hoping people will vote for Biden in this case and not go into the Trump camp, they're pushing people into the Trump camp when they are judging them and sneering at them and belittling them. So it's really not in anyone's best interest, and it's really hurting our cause. And it also, I think, violates our deepest values.
Yeah, I've read some things after the 2016 election that says when Hillary Clinton called Trump supporters deplorables, she actually caused a lot of people to say, screw you, you're negative, or you don't understand me at all. I'm going to go vote for Trump because you think I'm deplorable because you don't like what my concerns are. So
I'm in conversation with a lot of Trump supporters, and that's something that they still throw around. They say, oh, we're just deplorable.
Right. And so we need to be mindful of, and this would be true for, you know, whoever we had. I don't know what all your politics may be, but anybody with whatever kind of politics you have, recognize that what we do within our own group that might be alienating folks who might be in the middle or undecided or have mixed feelings, and not be giving your own group, whatever that is, a bad reputation as being insensitive, cruel, mean-spirited, whatever. Because
name calling and being disrespectful contradicts, I think, any of our values. It seems to be, if we look at our deepest values, and certainly we want to be the change. Gandhi talked about be the change.
That's right.
If we really want a world that works for everyone, I need to act and be aware in every moment and choose what will bring that into being.
I want to get back to Douglas again. Douglas, you have something to add to this? And then I want to ask you a question.
Well, in keeping with the theme of, I have to translate, by the way, depolarization, because people, at least I can't do a negative. So I can only do positive. So I'm moving toward unity. But even if somebody in my familiar circle starts to speak the way that was just described, and other people names, and an alternative, instead of calling them out, is to empathize with them, to think through the very good reasons that they have, not intellectual reasons, but the very good reasons that they have, what's going on with that person, out of a feelings and needs level. You don't have to name the feelings. I'm totally with what I heard many times. If you name a feeling, somebody doesn't like the diagnosis, and it's leading. And the art of being with somebody means exactly that. It means being exactly where they are without leading them in a sneaky way about the way that they should be. It's just asking over and over in your own mind and in your behavior, is this what is true for you?
Mm.
So instead of calling somebody out, just apply what we're talking about here
Yeah.
and empathize with the person.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you have to agree with them.
And I just want to say, I want to emphasize, because we talked about this at the beginning, but I think it can't be emphasized enough, is that this is a deep practice and a skill set, and it's not something that when the amygdala is really triggered into fight, flight, or freeze is so easy to do. And I just want to really emphasize that this takes some work. It's a muscle. And, you know, I think once you have a lot of practice, you can step back and empathize. But I think that is a very challenging thing. And that's why we have so much reactivity. Would you all agree with that? That this is, you know, maybe we take it for granted at this point because we've been practicing for decades, but it's not the norm. And it's not the way even our brains are wired until we really access, you know, sort of the higher states and stages.
Well, it reminds me of what you were teaching this afternoon, Rachel, Eryn, that we're going to mess up. We're going to get triggered. We might call out and not be empathetic when we really wish we had, and we can always go back and redo and go back and say, you know, that conversation didn't go the way I wanted it to. Could we do it? Could we try again? I really want to understand where you're coming from.
And all of you, in preparing for this interview, all of you had emphasized the importance of really, really good, deep listening. And we're back on that again here, which is important. And that was going to be my next question for Douglas, was to about the need to really listen deeply to what people are feeling beneath the words that they're saying, and to be with the people and profoundly connect whatever is true for them in this moment, to really be with them. Can you add to that, Douglas? I know you've expressed this well already, but is there anything else to add to this? Because I know that was one of the main points we wanted to cover here.
Well, I liked what I heard somebody say early on in this time together, that apply the same kindness and attention to what's inside. And that's the word I use is intention. So why am I listening to somebody? Am I clear about why I would bother to use my life energy in that way? If I'm not clear about that, then I'm at a high risk of just contributing to the problems. So that's the inner game. It's also knowing or having a presupposition that everything we do, everything we think, everything we feel is in a service to life. Even when I'm saying things to myself that are really unkind, if somebody were to hear my inner thoughts, if I can adopt the perspective that this is somehow serving life, then I can translate this confused, almost dreamlike language, which is taking me away from a high quality of connection with my needs, and they're not my needs, they're needs that are rising through me. And I think that's an important distinction to make. It helps me connect with those in a profoundly different way. What was I hoping for when I said and did whatever I said and did? What was I really hoping to experience? How did I want my inner weather to be? I might regret things that I said and did.
Sorry, I just have a question for you. How do you work with, because I am also doing a lot of social media engagement, and it seems like a lot of folks right now, because there's so much fear and because there's so much polarization, a lot of people are really very much on the surface of, I want to change you. I want to change your mind. And I want to change your politics. I want to change your vote. Whatever it is, there's a really strong agenda. People are coming at each other with that. So if your intention is to really want to make a deep connection, how do you shift that when somebody else's intention is not the same? How do you work with that?
Well, one thing that I've commonly done in that kind of situation is I just say, Are you hoping that as a result of our time together, that I'm going to change the way I look at the world? Is that what you're hoping for?
Nice.
And people will say whatever they say, but if I'm conscious of what I'm wanting, moment to moment, it doesn't matter what they say or do, I know where to go. So somebody might say, yes, I'm actually here to save you, you ignorant person. And if you would just listen to me for a minute, your life would be so much better. Okay, now I'm getting a little more information, aren't I? You actually care about me and my well-being. Is that what's going on? So yes, and so until, and you've done this well long enough, I'm sure, that eventually people stop talking. There's an energetic shift that happens, and they stop talking. And what I do in that moment is critical, because the extent to which I can be with the energy in that moment, the universe changes. So the next natural thing will come out, and it might be saying, I really like what I've heard. I like the care you're extending for me. I'm affected by that. Would you be willing to hear what's in my way of doing what you would like me to do?
Beautiful.
It's an invitation. So if you want to take it up at the 10,000 foot level, what's going on is I'm saying to my colleagues, there is a need of mine that is interfering with me doing what you would like me to do. And since I have committed to being alive, it means that I'm committed to honoring that need, that life energy inside me. It's getting in the way right now. And my conversation with this person might be, I would like you to hear me out and then tell me what you hear. And maybe the two of us together can figure out how a way that would satisfy both of us. How would that be for you? So it's a connecting request rather than purely a solution-oriented request. And again, you both mentioned, this takes an amount of training. So when people, we do role plays over and over and over and over in our trainings because people are exercising a different muscle. They're learning to surf differently. And then we say, how was that for you? And they say, wow, I really liked that. I was kind of lost there, but I liked where my head and my heart were. I actually felt more alive than the deadness that I often feel when I'm talking to, and you fill in the blank, my kid, wife, boss, mother-in-law, God. I've played God a lot of times in our trainings.
I've never tried that.
Just circling around, Rachel, does this, did that answer your question? I mean, did you get a?
It was great. No, I'm really hearing you. And it sounds like you can do that no matter where the other person is coming from, as we can too with the work that we do. That it doesn't matter where they're sourced or how skilled they are. There's a way in which we can always connect. And that sounds like Glenn, you too.
Yeah,
I don't mean to run away with the interview here.
That's one of the fun things about what we're proposing at the macro level here in this thing is we don't need to have the other person be with us in wanting to depolarize. We can take the initiative in doing some good listening, some deep listening, exercising some compassion, and we change the dynamics of what this interaction is about. We don't need to do this only with somebody who is of equally goodwill as we are. We can do this with somebody who is difficult, obstinate, opposite from us. There's that old saying about you can disagree without being disagreeable, and we're trying to get even beyond that disagreement thing down to the kind of what's that life energy, what's really going on in you that and so what we're doing here in this conversation is proposing ways that we really can indeed depolarize our society, and there's a lot of good things that we haven't yet had time to say that we could have said if we had time, but we're really getting close to the end of the hour. Right. It goes quickly.
I feel so called to just add one very quick point, if I may. And that is that, and I think this is where a lot of people worry about, well, if I do that, then I have to give up my truth. I can't say what I need to say to you. And I just want to say, I think in all of these practices, there is very much room to speak your own values and speak from your heart and talk about what's true and important to you. It's just we do it in a way that is more connecting.
Yes, yes, yes.
Just wanting,
So we really are just almost out of time. I want to thank all of our three guests for sharing their good hearts as well as their good heads, and see if we can maybe leverage some better compassion, better listening, better functioning as our society here. Yeah, all all of that. There are a lot of good sources of information. I don't have time to list them right now, but I'll have those on the blog. Is parallaxperspectives.org, and the TV program video will be linked at the TV programs part and at the nonviolence part. And also I'll type up a very thorough summary of what we said, including lists of links to other sources of information, books, videos, articles, and so forth, nonprofit organizations, including the ones that you folks work with, and some others. That'll all be on the blog. And I want to thank the guests. I want to thank all the people who've been watching. And throughout the world's histories, a lot of societies have had lots of different kinds of conflicts, fractures, polarizations, and so forth. And those are really not sustainable. We need to find ways to transcend them and do some healing. Doesn't mean denying our values, doesn't mean bullying somebody else into submission to our will, but we really can do some depolarization and some healing and better affirmations of all of our lives. And we have to decide as Americans if we're going to do that or not, because not enough people are doing the kinds of things that you folks are advocating. I want to mention again, we taped this interview on October 8th of 2020. Most of the air dates on Thurston Community Media, Cable Channel 22, will occur in November after the election. There is one that's the day before the election. The rest of them are after Election Day, November 3rd, 2020. But this program will stay on my blog. So we don't know what will happen leading up to the election or after, but sometime in November, we will tape our December program with Rachel, Eryn, and Susan, and we'll follow up with more stuff, even if we still don't know all of what's going on, but we have a lot more helpful things to say that we'll be doing. And all of these programs and resources will be on my blog. You can get information about a wide variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolence through my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. You can phone me at 360-491-9093. We are all one human family. We all share one planet. We can create a better world, but we all have to work at it. And the world needs exactly what you have to offer. So thanks to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, Glenn.
A pleasure.
A pleasure. Great to see you both.